Hello SGD, Sacred Geometry Decoded. In the description box you will find some links to some recent uploads directly connected to this, as well as the full series in regards to understanding the ancient sciences of the Great Pyramid. Now this has been a focus on the pyramid, but we'll start to explore more and more the connections between other ancient societies, the Greco-Romans, the Saxon foot, or the Northern foot, which was used up until the modern English foot was encoded in law, but more importantly the ancient Indian scale of measures, the Indus civilization, this very mysterious ancient civilization most famous for the cities of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, that not only the systems of measurement there, the Indus scale of measurement, but also the weight system used there corresponds sublimely with the ancient Indian systems and has been passed through time. Systems of measuring length, systems of measuring time, systems of measuring weight, all bringing us to this lovely harmonic system which unites music, geometry, arithmetic and astronomy in a very measurable way. The artifacts are clear, the architecture of the ancients is clear, and we'll be exploring this more and more. Links in the description to previous episodes and the full playlist. It was through the study of ancient architecture, sacred numbers, Platonic geometry, Pythagorean theorem, Pythagorean music theory, that I was eventually drawn to the study of time, because I'm very interested in weights and measures, and time is a system of measurement and a very important one. So at least officially speaking in regards to publication, it was Merrin-Mersenne, 1640, who first defined a 1 second pendulum. That is at 99.4 centimeters or 0.99 meters. This was very important for a number of aspects in regards to arranging society, but had other applications as well. Another very important figure who was also a Jesuit was Giovanni Battista Riccioli, whose Almagestum Novum, who was a very curious publication in regards to astronomy, but also the use of Greek ancient symbolism on the frontispiece as well. But it was Riccioli, in this piece, he published two books, book 2 and book 9 I believe it was, that dealt with falling bodies and pendulums. So he was also dealing with gravity prior to, most famously, Isaac Newton, and he was the one who first published that a pendulum must be at a shallow angle. For instance, at 40 degrees the pendulum loses timing, and in his studies he was using choirs to find this perfect time, music, geometry and metrology coming together. But the Merrin-Mersenne pendulum of 1 second, and also using this 30-degree geometry, which is so vital and embedded in the Vesica, Star of David, Templar cross and Maltese cross as well, this lovely geometry. But the Merrin-Mersenne pendulum, which was defined as a 1 second pendulum at 45 degrees north or standard gravity, almost became the official US units of measurement. So George Washington and Thomas Jefferson were about to bring in a US foot of 33.146 centimeters, therefore 1 yard would be a 1 second pendulum at 45 degrees north. This is very Hermetic. It's the bringing together of the measurement of length, which incorporates the measurement of time and a specific unit at a specific place on the Earth, 45 degrees north or south from the equator. And it is the measurement of length and time, Hermes, Thoth, gods of weights and measure, and so vital in all science but also civilization, weights and measures as a standard. Must be also emphasized that the imperial system was later then redefined, so US customary units of measure are slightly different from the imperial system. Very, very close, but that is a point to keep in mind. However, the British imperial system or the US customary system, for foot, usually we think of 12 inches per foot, but historically in so many other aspects in regards to conversion points, It's the finger that we really must consider. A foot is 12 thumbs or inches, but it is also 16 fingers. And here we have a very interesting connection, because in regards to the Vitruvian man or the modern European scales, but how they relate to the ancient Egyptian scales. Now, Vitruvian man describes the height and the width of a man from fingertip to being 4 cubits, and the illustration itself corroborates this, just as in the 10 Books of Architecture by Vitruvius, where he describes the fundamental units of a man in regards to the symmetry of a temple. What is interesting, so one man is 4 cubits high from your elbow to your fingertip, also 4 cubits wide. Given the Egyptian royal cubit of pi over 6 meters, therefore the idealized Egyptian man would be just over 2 meters. However, in De Architectura by the 10 Books of Architecture by Vitruvius, he also describes that a man should be 6 feet high and 6 feet wide. However, if you examine the illustration, it is nowhere, well, it's not close to that at all. The height of the figure compared to his foot in the Vitruvian man is actually closer to 6.9 feet. Quite a bit off from 6 feet, and that also corresponds from the tip of your hairline to the base of your neck. This is very interesting because the Vitruvian man, in regards to the size of his foot in regards to his height, is very close to 6.9. Well, 4 Egyptian royal cubits is 6.8714 feet. Very, very close to that figure. And here I believe there is one of these Hermetic mysteries by by this very famous figure, Leonardo da Vinci, which is incorporating the foot, the meter and the cubit, but also linking it, most importantly, to the use of the second. Man is the measure of all things, and I believe here Vitruvius, then da Vinci, were encoding a very important piece of information in regards to the foot, the meter and the Egyptian royal cubit, which leads us to the second. Man is a measure of all things. So Vitruvian man is very, very close to 6.9 feet, given the width of the drawing lines. It's hard to be exact. However, the correspondence is ever so close. So again, within what's available based on the illustration, clearly he's not 6 feet, he's closer to 6.9, and 6.8714 feet is 4 ancient Egyptian royal cubits, the height of the width of the idealized Egyptian man. It's also the width of the Grand Gallery, for instance. Throughout the pyramid you'll find this, but it's worth noting that the foot corresponds to the forearm, from your elbow to your wrist. This is an important feature because the English foot is 12 inches, but more importantly it is 16 fingers wide, just as is described in Vitruvian man and the work of Marco Vitruvius. The portions of a body correspond to the whole, and then that corresponds to the perfect temple. So an Egyptian royal cubit is 4 fingers per palm, therefore an Egyptian royal cubit is 28 fingers. As we saw with Vitruvian man, the foot corresponds from the elbow to the wrist. The Egyptians also divided their units into fingers, and as we can see, 4/7 of an Egyptian royal cubit is the elbow to the wrist. That is 16 fingers. The Egyptian foot, or jezza, part of my pronunciation, is 16 fingers. Now that's very interesting because the difference between 16 imperial English fingers, which is 30.84 centimeters, and the Egyptian jezza or foot of 29.9199 centimeters has a difference of 5.6 millimeters. This is a very interesting fact because it's actually this difference, this margin of error, will lead us to a series of lovely coincidences that will join various pendulums via the second to multiple sets of ancient measure, including the Mohenjo-Daro, the Indus scale of measurements. So 1 meter, a foot plus a meter plus a cubit equals 6 feet. 1 meter pendulum at 30 degrees gives us an arc of pi over 6 meters, or 1 Egyptian raw cubit, the Egyptian foot is 5.6 millimeters difference from the English foot. So therefore, if we begin with Mersenne pendulum, that is 5.613 millimeters short of a 1 meter pendulum. The 1 meter pendulum gives us an arc of pi over 6 meters, or E minus 1 feet, or 1 Egyptian raw cubit. So the meter, the foot at E minus 1, and the second comes together in this very lovely sense, based on this difference between the Egyptian and the English foot, a difference of 5.6 millimeters. This will now extend and actually link us lovely places to other units of measurement. So now we can see these 4 pendulums, and so the Mersenne pendulum of 99.4387 centimeters, the arc there is 27.33 fingers, or just over, fraction over 1 Samian cubit. Now if we add 5.84 millimeters to the meter, we get a pendulum whose length is 3.3 feet. Now 3.3 feet, think of 33 feet in cathedrals, Masonic temples, and again across the ancient world. Now what's interesting is that the straight line across that particular pendulum is within a tiny fraction of a millimeter from the arc of the Mersenne pendulum. The length of 3.3 feet converts to 1 Saxon yard, this ancient unit, or 3 Indus Mohenjo-daro scales, which brings us back to the Indus Valley civilization, which was flourishing between 3000 and 2500 BC. The language hasn't been cracked yet, but the systems of measurement have been left, including measurements of weight and measurements of length. And it's a lovely coincidence that Mohenjo-daro is 27 degrees and 19 minutes north, essentially 27.3 degrees north of the equator. So the measurement of the Mohenjo-daro unit gives us 3.3 feet, this very, very accurate pendulum, which corresponds to the Mersenne pendulum. Now it also happens that Mohenjo-daro were using a weight scale where it was 1, then 2, then 4, then 8, then 16. So we have what, let's just call it an ounce for this moment. For Mohenjo-daro, ounce was 27.3 grams, which is a lovely coincidence because the copper deben of ancient Egypt was 27.3 grams. Spanish doubloons, 27.3 grams. Roman ounce in Rome, 27.3 grams. Greek ounce, 27.3 grams. Islamic ounce, 27.3 grams. Back to the Minoans as well, this unit of measurement of weight corresponding so wonderfully. Now that pendulum of 3.3 feet, or 3 Mohenjo-daro units, or a Saxon yard, the straight line across corresponds to the Mersenne pendulum. The arc itself is within a fraction of a hair from 1.728 feet, which is the canonical cubit as discussed by John Neal and John Michel. Now if we add 5.675 millimeters to that pendulum, we have now a pendulum of 1 meter, 1 centimeter, and 1.51516 millimeters. I was interested by that one because now the straight line across gives us 1 Egyptian raw cubit. So we've turned the arc of a 1 meter, 1 second pendulum is now turned into a straight line. We've turned the curve into a straight line, and we see the same application. We add 5.6 mil, 5.84 mil, 5.675 millimeters, tiny fractions. Now those yellow lines, the arc or the straight line of the Mohenjo-daro cubit pendulum, incorporates the Samian cubit, which is 27.33 fingers. The Doric, the Ionic, and the English foot, but especially the Doric and the Ionic, is very Hermetic, esoteric. For instance, in Freemasonic tracing boards, we still see the Doric, Ionic, and Corinthian columns, the 3 Greek orders of architecture. These are systems, aesthetic systems of architecture and proportion. But this happens to correspond to the Ionian and Dorian modes of music, which apparently were invented during the 15 to 1600s, yet they beautifully correspond to the ancient Greek measures of Doric and Ionic and how they correspond to the English foot once again. This all comes from the Samian stone, the stone of Salamis, which the length and the height and the perimeter converts to the Samian or Samos scale, as in Pythagoras of Samos, and we see the Samian cubit, 27.3 imperial fingers embedded in here